situation where you find that a person look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Time to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. We'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, where we have the lead story talk about revenue sharing formula. El-Rufai wants 80% for states, revert to 1963 constitution. The writer says Soludo advocates devolution of powers. Let's deploy technology to diversify economy, says Pantami, that's Minister of Communications. All of that on page 4. Above the lead story, Supreme Court affirms Adeleke as Osun governor. You'd find that on page 10. Sudan crisis, airlines sign agreement to airlift Nigerian Hajj pilgrims on page 3. Senate probes NDDC over 1.4 trillion naira illegal spending on page 3 as well. You also find below the lead story, 15 girls die in Sokoto boat mishap. You'd find that on page 6. Crude oil theft. FG demands 7 billion naira before vessel release on page 19. 7 fear dead after drinking tea at wedding in Kano. Quite a strange story and quite a sad story at the same time. You would find the details much later when we begin the conversation. How could you take tea and die? Well, we'll find the details of that. Now, the pictorial there basically shows you Nablus-occupied West Bank Palestinian protesters take cover amid clashes with Israeli forces during a raid in the old city. The Israeli army said its troops had entered Nablus. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said its medics treated 145 injuries, the majority from tear gas inhalation, while a dozen people were shot with live fire. Now, below that, tribunal hears Obi's motion today. Articles on Tinubu's citizenship tomorrow. The writer says ex-Lagos governor seeks dismissal of APM's petition. All that on page 4. These are the stories on the cover page of Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. It has a lead story that says, presidential poll, tribunal to consider PDP LP's live broadcast request. And the first writer, broadcasting proceedings live is of national importance. This is according to Atiku's legal team, and the Labour Party insists on this as well. And then the second writer, Justice Samani promises speedy treatment of demand. APC vows appropriate response. And beneath that, we have a pictorial of the governor of Osun State celebrating his win at the Supreme Court yesterday. And there's a caption there, final victory. Buhari Tinubu congratulate Adeleke. Supporters jubilate. Beneath that, we have 15 die in Sokoto boat accident, 25 missing. Lagos mishap. Lagos bishop raped me twice, female pastor. We also have federal government others private jets removal from Abuja airport. And above the masthead, Speaker, 5 aggrieved aspirants team up against Abbas. Otedola fumes over Transcorp deal. Elumelu keeps mum. We also have over $200 billion national assets lost to terrorism. This is according to the federal government. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today.
All right, now let's take a look at the next paper. Now, the Nation newspaper is next. The lead story there, it says, National Assembly, Akpabio Abbas rally lawmakers for support. You also have petrol subsidy pushing Nigeria to bankruptcy, Sanusi warns. El-Rufai Buhari declined advice to end payment. Buhari, Tinubu congratulate Adeleke. You also have monetary policy alone can't reset economy, says CBN. Non-oil sector critical to recovery. These are the main stories on the Nation this morning.
Over now to this day newspaper has a lead story that says, Adeleke survives as Supreme Court affirms his election. PDP Buhari Tinubu celebrate. And the first rider, President urges citizens to team up with governor to develop state. I will govern with God's fear, Adeleke promises, says verdict historic. It's evident Beavers has come to stay, Atiku declares. And above that, we have FG approves acquisition of Abuja Disco by Transcorp Consortium. We also have INEC, APC, Tinubu may oppose live broadcast of proceedings. And that's about it on, okay, just above the masthead, we have banks demand tax clearance certificate on FX transactions. Those are the major stories on this day for today.
All right, and on the leadership newspaper, the lead story there, leadership lead story, says ahead of inauguration, 2,585 appointees, aides brace for job loss. You also have 10th NAS, APC defense zoning, cites equity inclusion. You have leadership newspaper as well, 2023 Hajj, Nakon, 4 Nigerian airlines sign airlift pact. Soludo, Erufai, Sanusi, others task Tinubu on restructuring. You also have May 29, private jet owners worried over fan relocation notice. You also would see other stories, Oshun governorship, Supreme Court dashes Oyetola's hope, 16 killed in Akwa Ibom cult clash. Tony Blair, 2 U.S. governors, others for governors-elect induction. These are the main stories on the leadership front cover. All right, that's the last paper we are looking at. Now let's get some more perspectives. We have Ben Shemang, the former director of news, Voice of Nigeria, with us here in the studio to talk about some of these stories. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you. My great pleasure.
Yeah. Well, quite interesting this morning. We are talking about the lead story now on the Daily Trust newspaper, talking about restructuring. The governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, calling for a revert to the 1963 constitution, wherein the states, got a chunk of the allocation, 80%. And, while all of this is happening, you would say, well, at one point in time, the Kaduna State governor was the chair of the APC restructuring committee, sort of, and they made their recommendations. Nothing happened. This is, 8 years, and a lot of people will say, well, do you really mean what you say?
Let me chuckle. It's good to see wisdom when you leave office. It's good to see wisdom and the mastery, the art of administration when you have just a step out of the office. These things have been there. Now, they forgot those yearning and calling for this. At what point did they even, at the state level, the states, the superintendent, at what level did they give some arms of government their own rights? Talking of the local government finances, did El-Rufai also give the local government their money directly, without interference? Did El-Rufai also allow the state legislature to have its own independence financially, judiciary financially? I still remember when APC was APC, the days of Oshumole. If you were entering through Edo State, you would see some bad roads with billboards. This is federal government road, even within Benin City. Therefore, you will not do it because it's a federal government. Federal government was PDP then. You know, if you went to Lagos that time, Minister of Works now was the governor, Fashola. Each time you saw a road construction going on, you see a billboard. Sorry for the inconveniences. This is where your tax is being spent. Two different things. This man believes, yes, he received tax from Lagosians, from Nigeria, but the roads are going on. Of course, there were inhibitions as to movements. You could see the courtesy. Sorry, this is where we are spending your money, so bear with us. But compare that with what Oshimole was having that time. This is a federal government road. You know, just a moment. So when we begin to say, give the federal government this allocation, the state this allocation, local government this allocation. Let's go back to 1963 when I was born. I asked this, what about the moral burden? Those who received this money, even as at today, what have they used these monies for?
Yes, Mr.
It's
Chairman,
not
that was
just
what I was
waking
going
up
to say. I was going to say that maybe it's not necessarily about the person who made a statement, not necessarily the messenger, but the message. A lot of Nigerians would say that at the moment, what are states doing with the allocation given to them? Now, when you now give them 80% and leave 20% to the federal government, in the story it added that, of course, the federal government will now do less. Most of the things that the federal government is doing now will now be handled by the states. But the question is, what is it doing with what it is receiving at the moment? So much so that if it is giving this 80%, we will expect more.
Honestly, instead of having teen gods, demigods, I mean, those who are in charge, emperors in the states, I don't know which power is bigger than that of an emperor when you now have 80% for the state. Now, if, like I said, question of conscience, whatever money comes to a family, I say, I don't trust my dad, give mom. No, I trust my sister more, give her. No, what about my brother? You're doing all of that, time is being wasted. I tell you, just like the Nigerian constitution, this one is faulty. No, it was crafted by the military. Did the military come from some space? There are Nigerians who also want to survive. We have a way of moving with the document to guide us. If there are some places where we feel they are now injurious, and that's why the law itself allows you, the operator, to think about it, change it when it is injurious. So when we now say the federal government is carrying too much burden, first of all, the states, they said he who goes to equity must go with clean hands. And when you point at one accusing finger, the rest are pointed back at you. And so, in Nigeria, you know it. People will suddenly start advising government or those in power when indeed they have left power. What did you do when you were there?
Okay,
very vital.
What will it take really to make this happen? Because we've seen this remain a promise for years, several years. We keep talking about restructuring Nigeria, true federalism. At some point it became a very heated argument in this country where some people say, well, restructuring, it depends on who is talking about restructuring. We now began to have different definitions of restructuring and the rest of them, and year in, year out, for each election cycle that comes, you find politicians putting that in their manifesto as promises that they are, and the same APC that we're talking about after 8 years. What will it take really? We've seen some of the bills, that borders on restructuring fail in the states where it gets to the issue of securing 25% to third support from the states, of the country. They fail. Even the ones that, you could say will benefit for instance, state assemblies and the rest of them, they fail. So what will it take really?
Honestly, it would take so much of, I think, waste of time. How many constitutions have we had? Little Constitution, Richardson Constitution, Macpherson Constitution. We've had all sorts of political, I mean, during the Abacha days, we had one. I mean, Babangida came, we had all sorts of, we are always, like they said, when you see problems in Nigeria, just go and find the solution in a conference hall and thereafter disperse. That's always the thing. I don't know. See, what we have today, if we simply bring in honesty to what we have, to the Constitution, it will still work.
You know, Mr. Chairman, what Ayuba was asking was the fact that this appears as if it's actually the way to go, whether we like it or not. At some point, the federal government will have to do less and let the states do more. So what's the best way to achieve it?
So has the states been doing its best now?
No, we do know that they are not. So what's the way forward now? And at some point, we have to think about that,
I said something here, our honesty. The document is not at fault. The implementers and the method in which they are implementing it. By the time, okay, this is El Rufai's opinion. Someone else comes to say, no, we've had, there's another constitution that we have to look at, the pre-independence constitution. It will be better for us because, yeah, this was how the regions voted, and this was how representation was done, and we had a less kind of some people are saying, let's go parliamentary. You go parliamentary, okay, you do away with this federal structure. The Council of Ministers will all be one in the assembly. From the assembly, they appoint you and all that stuff. For us to be wasting all this time, for God's sake, when we said, let's think out with this, devolution of power, we've seen all of that going to the state assemblies. What's the result? Give local governments autonomy. What's the result? I mean, it's always
saying there's no hope?
No, there is hope. The hope is just a change of mind and things will work. Remember, let's borrow Benin Republic. What was happening then? Nesfor Soglo was such a terrible, Matthew Kereku was such a terrible guy. And things started going so bad. And he said, okay, the pressure was so much from the Catholic conference. And he said, okay, what do we do? Call a conference. And they call a conference. What's the essence? Let's see. Are you the problem or the Beninois are the problem? So he said, let there be an election.
Okay.
You can contest. And he contested and lost. They said, you see, you are now the problem. And that was how Benin Republic became a better place. When you believe knowledge must start from you, it must end from you, you are at the top giving instructions, everybody must be yes sir, some kind of, like Charlie Boy would say,
okay,
our mumu don't do.
All right, well, let's look at the second leg of this same story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, where the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission is, kind of revealing to us, that some CEOs in government earn more than the president, and they are calling for a review of the salary or remuneration, scale of, the president, the governors and all that. It says that the president earns 1.2 million naira, and you have CEOs who are earning 5 million naira. Who would ever think, or who would ever believe that the whole president earns just 1.2 million naira as salary?
My brother, go and find out how much CEOs in Nimasa, how much they earn. Go and find out big guys in CBN, how much they receive. It is true. They earn more than the president.
But is this so much of a concern? Because no one is more powerful than the president in a country. So he can decide, to make those changes if really they are of big concern.
You see, it has to be in line with the Constitution.
And Mr. Sherman, when you say they earn more than the president, is it the what is it? The basic, or what exactly do you mean when you say?
See,
when
everything you can ever think of, your basic salary. Now you put. See, today go and see what they call furniture allowance. The president does not change furniture, but these people
but
almost.
But the security vote somewhere.
Security vote is for you and I. It's different.
Unaccounted for.
Well, it is for you and I. It's the truth. If there are some riots here and there, you also have to intervene in some issues.
You said security votes for, well, you and I, so to say, in your own words. Have you received the last times?
Yeah, you see, security vote is not as if this is the money, therefore security, Stella take your own, Ayuba take yours, Ilya take yours, Daniel Manson take yours, Ben Shaman, this is yours. It is not so. How does it work? Sometimes when you see all these interventions on security issues here and there, that is where the money comes from. There are issues, even outbreak of diseases, some cholera and all that. This is security vote. There are instances where...
Mr. Sherman, I think security vote is the most fluid statement in this country.
That's why
because it's one thing you cannot... Yes, you can't say, okay, this is what it was used for. It just, you know...
I mean, when you say you don't see attacks here and there in Nigeria, the way Boko Haram was doing that way, it also tells you it has to do with security vote.
Okay, the money has been used to tackle it.
I mean,
okay, but
what else?
But Mr.
Okay.
Sherman,
what else? That's exactly what
Mr. Sherman, the Revenue Mobilization Commission is saying that the last time it had that review of salaries for public office holders was in 2008. This is more than 10 years, more than a decade after that happened. I would say about 15 years now. What will it take to review that salary for public servants? And is it that the public officials themselves are not bothered, you know, about how much they really earn as salaries? Are there other allowances, other benefits that they get that makes them not to consider it maybe as important? Because if really it is, like I earlier said, by now nobody would be talking about, you know, taking that long to review the salary of Mr. President, if that's all that there is for him, you know, to take home. So perhaps there are other benefits, isn't it?
Yeah, you see, there's no human being that doesn't like pleasure. You avoid pains to seek pleasure. You avoid bad salaries. What are these pleasures? Can I be able to pay my bills? You know, there's no civil servant who doesn't want increase in salary. Some people will say, don't increase the salary, but let everything be available so that with my little money, I can buy a bag of rice. My little money, I can pay school fees. My little money, I can buy a car, buy a house if I want. And the revenue mobilization, there is a provision, I'm not sure now, every 5 years or 10, no, it should be 5, you have to increase workers' salaries. And talking of the minimum. And you realize that every time the federal government increases, the state will say the federal government cannot make laws for the states. Meanwhile, some states you go and see that they are paying far higher than federal government workers. I was seeing the deputy governor of Edo State, warning revenue generators. Say for a month, 18 local governments were only able to generate 3 million naira. 3 million. Meanwhile, if you go to some agencies in that same state, go and see how much some people are getting.
You know, Mr. Sherman, the last time the Revenue Mobilization talked about a review of this salaries, he talked about people in the cadre of the president and top government officials, and the NLC went up in arms. They said that even what the people in that cadre at this point were earning was higher than what the average civil servant was earning. You know, that came up.
See, I don't have an issue for a president to have what is due to him. But we have forgotten what these governors, I mean, the money governors control, they have direct control.
Are we coming back to the security votes?
Just a moment. The kind of money the governors control directly, the president cannot do it. in this country.
So at the end of the day, the review of the salary is of no consequence. But how will it help us in curbing the issue of corruption? Because, so for instance, you have someone who, legitimately doesn't want to put his hand into government coffers and, do some things. He just want to, take his salaries and just work and deliver for the people and the rest of them. In that sense, the person, the temptation is quite high, if I may say that, because here you are earning a salary that is way below, right? Even some of your employees, so to say, because as a governor, if you have DGs or certain office holders earning much more than you, then it means that your employees are earning much more than you. So, do you think that reviewing it will help us curb issues of corruption and people going out of their way and putting their hands into where they are not meant to?
Yes, if you review, it will help in terms of fighting against corruption. Because here you are, you live in a competitive world, a capitalist society, whereby, some people you don't really know what they do in their offices. But by the time you see their salaries, when you talk of some companies that cannot refine a spoon of petrol, yet go and see. You have a group managing director refining. You have group managing director crude oil. You have group managing director personnel. You have group managing. So what really are you refining?
All right,
you don't see it, and go and see how much they receive. Meanwhile, when you say teachers' salaries have been increased, workers, when you say workers, every messenger, every this been increased, it's then the market now goes aflame in terms of hyperinflation. Go and see prices of goods.
All right,
so
Mr. Chairman.
that has to be stopped, because truly a governor who finished a service as a civil servant, became a governor, left and became a minister, left and became a senator. All of these advantages are still there.
And he's receiving pensions sometimes. All right, Mr. Chairman.
All sorts of pensions.
All right, Mr. Chairman. There's also the story on the front page of the Daily Trust. 7 feared dead after drinking tea at a wedding in Kano. The story says that the tea was made with other substances, and that some youths came there, and that, as a matter of fact, some who tasted it and felt their brain could not handle it abandoned it, but some others went ahead to take it. It boils down to the issue of drug abuse in the country.
Sure, and we expect that if you're also not sure of what you are drinking, follow your conscience. Some tested and said no. Others felt no, I needed to go high. And now here we are. Instead of going high, they went high and became so low. And it says something concerning checks too. You see, when people hawk all manner of things here and there that people don't just understand, it shouldn't be. We also expect that not just NDLEA, we expect NAFDAC to start doing some deployments. All those people in terms of health delivery, they should check all of that.
In this case, is there anything that the NDLEA can do really? Because this is a wedding, right? And so the organizers of the wedding, the host and everybody, feel that, okay, let's find a way, because we constantly see how the ingenuity of drug addicts, come to play. Sometimes they bake cake and it has some elements of Indian hem in it. Sometimes it's biscuits, all kinds of forms. And this time around we are seeing that it is in a tea, and they decided, let's put in certain leaves, local leaves, to make it an intoxicant and so forth. So when you look at some of these methods that is constantly being developed, just to make sure that
honestly, you see,
how do you help it?
Yes, how do we help it? There has to be some rates here and there. There has to be. Even the police, you involve them. We've spoken about security votes here. Truly, you engage some people formally and informally. These are people who can pick a phone call and say, this is happening in so place, and people carry a rate. I think it's
this
not
is
just
a wedding, Mr. Sherman.
Yes,
it's a wedding. Only invited guests are allowed.
At the point of having some substances being gathered somewhere, these people are already taken. They've already taken it. At that point, it is late, but not late as per investigation. Just a moment, Stella. These people have taken it and died. Can we get testimonies from those who took and
some
survived?
are in hospital,
can we yes, can we look at, can we see what they ingested? Can we do some analysis? Can we begin to trace at what point did they obtain this?
Mr. Sherman, there's
who
a
supplied
bigger
this?
problem.
Where is the source?
Mr. Sherman, there's a bigger problem. The problem of the fact that youth are engaging in this thing. So even if you say you raid this particular place, if there's no change in attitude, if there's no, there's a need for something different to actually get the youth to stop, because it appears as if even if you raid this market today, they'll have a way of finding it.
Yes, you see, you can always minimize it. I remember going to interview Danjuma Goje, and we stumbled on, he just said, please, don't bring that out, and I won't bring it out here. It was a kind of an intoxicant that still I was surprised that youth were engaged in those things. Said, please don't bring that out. And we obeyed. So some of these things, when you know, of course, people were deployed and there was some sensitization. When you see your children behaving this way, and when you see them in some groups you don't trust, I mean, this is where the police, if they can see some guys with rough hair, with computers, and you just say, no, these are Yahoo boys. When you see some people, I mean, the Constitution, yes, we say people should have freedom of movement. That does not mean you cannot stop and search some things. It should happen. And see one avoidable thing, even though not related to this, but very vital. See those girls that died in Sokoto.
Yeah, the boat mishap.
The boat mishap. What were they trying to do? Cross a river around Shagari local government to go do what? Fetch firewood. Fetch firewood for a country that is #1 in crude oil supply, Nigeria, that children who ordinarily ought to be in school, they were going to look for fuel, wood, firewood. At the level we are, when people inhale all sorts of smoke, and what are the consequences? I think that felling of trees, making a forest so, I mean, no longer thick, it shouldn't just be. And for this avoidable accident, very, very avoidable, I think that Sokoto State ought to be mourning. Kaduna State ought to be mourning. If you check how many trees are the felling of trees in Kaduna State, check, just take from Suleja up, going to Kaduna, and see charcoal business. It's now a business. They are in lorries come to buy. Take from Kwai, I mean from Kefi going towards Kwai, see charcoal business. I mean, we no longer have forestry officers. The traditional institution is no longer being used to check forestry. I come from a village where, look, when my father was in charge, you could see, if you go fell a tree, it must be a dry old tree that must be used. Not that you go cut fresh trees. Today, it's like nobody's in charge.
All right. Well, this is where we end it. Thank you so much, Ben Sherman, for your perspectives. We are indeed calling on the authorities to do the needful, specifically NIWA in this instance, the Nigeria Inland Waterways Authority. Well, I don't know if they have offices in those places, because this boat mishaps have happened over and over again, where you see people die in droves. Is really unacceptable, and we are calling on the authorities to do the needful. Also, for young people, devising means of, taking substances that are not really healthy, they are not really helpful to you. I mean, the stories we're reading today, it's not a good story at all. 7 people dying. It's sad. Well, that's that for the newspaper reviews today. We'll take a short break now, and then when we return, we'll take a look at the headlines again and also our discussion of the day. Join us again.
situation where you find that a party look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or
Because I
regional.
have said that